Welcome to the Explainer. Now, I want you to picture this scenario for a second. It's 2 a.m. on a Sunday, and your phone just starts blowing up with frantic alerts. A highly sophisticated ransomware variant has managed to lock down your organization's entire primary IT estate. Your corporate emails, gone. Internal chat platforms, completely frozen. So as an incident responder, you reach for your emergency crisis communication tool to rally the team and stop the bleeding. But here's the million-dollar question. Is it actually going to work? Today, we're unpacking an incredibly vital topic, the litmus test, defining true out-of-band communication. We're going to dive right into exactly what separates a real, reliable emergency lifeline from a super dangerous illusion. Okay, so let's tackle this critical question head on. Is your crisis tool truly out of band, or is it literally just a feature of your compromised estate, wearing a clever little label? Honestly, it is a terrifying moment when IT leaders realize their emergency backup plan is firmly tethered to the exact system that is currently sinking. I mean, if your crisis system depends on the very same network it is supposed to bypass, it's not a lifeline at all, right? It acts as a trap. It just lulls you into this false sense of security right up until the exact second you need it most.
And that really brings us to a foundational definition here. A false OBU, or a false out-of-band system, is a crisis communication system that depends on literally any of the infrastructure it exists to work around. Just think about the logic of that for a second. During a massive network outage or an active cyber attack, your primary environment is hostile territory. Relying on any part of it to run your emergency communications is a fatal dependency. It's basically like storing the keys to your backup generator inside a room that's currently on fire.
So to separate the real tools from the dangerous fakes, we're going to methodically unpack the definitive framework. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the out-of-band illusion, and then we're going to walk straight through the 4 non-negotiable independence tests. That's identity, hosting, network, and blast radius independence.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the out-of-band illusion. We really need to define exactly what we are defending against when our primary systems inevitably fail us. Take a look at the sheer variety and severity of the threats that can just totally destroy your primary IT estate. We aren't just talking about, a simple isolated server glitch here. We're looking at massive network outages, aggressive ransomware that encrypts everything it touches, and identity provider compromise, where the attackers literally steal the digital keys to the kingdom. Plus, we've got to factor in cloud tenant lockouts and even deliberate attacker monitoring of your internal channels. If a threat actor is already sitting quietly inside your network, reading all your internal messages, you absolutely need a system that stands entirely apart from all these risks so you can actually coordinate your defense. So how do we guarantee our system stands apart? Well, we use this core framework. 1. Identity independence. 2. Hosting independence. 3. Network independence. And 4. Blast radius independence. The standard we're reviewing today treats these 4 rigid tests as the absolute definition of true out-of-band. And the main takeaway here is incredibly strict. If a system fails even one of these tests, I don't care what the vendor's marketing materials claim, it is not out-of-band. It's just a conventional tool. Let's move over to Test 1 and see how this actually builds our absolute standard of security. Section 2, Test 1, Identity Independence. Because when a crisis hits, your very first hurdle is simply getting your people logged into the system. This perfectly illustrates a massive vulnerability that a lot of organizations completely overlook until it is way too late. Over on the left, we've got a flawed login setup. This relies solely on your organization's Active Directory, Azure AD, Entra ID, or whatever standard single sign-on provider you use. And sure, that is super convenient on a normal Tuesday. But look at the right, true OOB login. This dictates that your incident responders absolutely must be able to log in successfully, even if the corporate identity provider is completely compromised or offline. If you use your own SSO as the only way in, you are effectively locking yourself out of your own lifeboat the second your main ship's power cuts out. A true crisis tool just has to have an independent way to authenticate its users. Moving right along, now that we've established secure access, we need to examine where this tool actually lives. Section 3, Test 2. Hosting independence. The crucial point here is an absolute deal breaker. The crisis communication system must not be hosted within your organization's own Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, or Azure tenant. If your company relies on M365 for its day-to-day operations, your crisis tool cannot just be another little app sitting inside that exact same M365 environment. It just cannot share the same neighborhood as your primary estate. And why is that? Because it all boils down to this golden rule: zero shared infrastructure.
That means no shared control plane, no shared credentials, and absolutely zero shared points of administrative compromise. Think about it. If a hacker breaches your primary IT estate and grabs your global admin credentials, that breach needs to hit a brick wall. A shared point of administrative compromise basically hands an attacker the ability to shut down your corporate network and your crisis communications in one single devastating strike. True out-of-band means complete and total isolation at the hosting level. Okay, let's keep building this fortress. Section 4 brings us to Test 3, Network Independence. This test is all about how you physically reach the system during a total lockdown. Picture this. The alarms start ringing, but your incident commander isn't sitting safely at their desk. Maybe they're out getting groceries. On top of that, your corporate network might have just been completely severed from the internet by your own internal security team just to stop a worm from spreading laterally. Therefore, the absolute baseline requirement is that your crisis tool must be reachable via mobile network SMS and public internet access from any device. It has to be fully accessible over a path that absolutely, categorically does not require your internal network or your corporate VPN to work. I want you to consider this really powerful realization. Reliance on a corporate-issued laptop or VPN client defeats the purpose. Just let that sink in for a second. If your responder is traveling, or they're at home on a personal computer because their work laptop literally just got bricked by ransomware, and they can't get to the emergency platform without first connecting to a corporate VPN that's offline, yeah, you failed the test. Which brings us to our final and honestly perhaps most encompassing test. Section 5, Test 4, Blast Radius Independence. Let's dive right into this ultimate standard. I like to think of a cyber attack like a literal explosion. It has a blast radius, right? When a massive event hits your primary estate, let's say it's a full ransomware encryption event or a catastrophic cloud misconfig that totally wipes out your core servers, those shockwaves travel incredibly fast. For a system to be true OOB, it has to be completely unaffected by that primary estate compromise. We're looking at three main pillars here. System availability, it has to stay online and responsive no matter what. System data, your emergency contact lists, your runbooks, those critical messages, they cannot be encrypted, altered, or deleted by the attacker. And finally, the audit trail. Your logs have to remain pristine and untouched, so when you're doing the post-incident review, you know exactly who communicated what. The blast radius of the attack absolutely has to stop dead at the walls of your out-of-band system. So let's pull all of this together into this visual scorecard. Identity, it has to be accessible if the corporate ID provider goes down. Hosting, absolutely no shared Microsoft, Google, or Azure tenant. Network, it's got to be reachable without a VPN or a corporate-issued device. And blast radius, completely unaffected by a full ransomware event. Now, I want you to look really closely at that right-hand column. Notice how the result of failure for every single one of these tests is exactly the same, scored as a conventional tool. There's no partial credit in a crisis, guys. Failing even a single one of these requirements drops an out-of-band system right back down to a vulnerable, conventional tool that's probably going to fail you during a critical incident. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly critical question. Knowing this strict, non-negotiable definition, does your organization's crisis communication system actually pass the litmus test? It's a question that every single IT leader, executive, and incident responder needs to answer honestly today. Please don't wait until your network goes totally dark to find out if your lifeline is real or just an illusion wearing a fancy label. Take the time, test your systems against these four pillars, demand true independence, and ensure your team actually has the power to communicate when everything else goes down. Stay curious and stay secure.